Hello and welcome to my kitchen. This is going to be my last episode of what I've learned from my continuous glucose monitor. For those of you that have been following me, you know that I have been wearing the Abbott Freestyle 2 Libre continuous glucose monitor. And because one of the monitors fell off and Abbott replaced it, I ended up wearing it not just for 28 days, but for 38, 39 days because I had an additional amount of time when they sent me another monitor for free. Anyways, what I want to do today is kind of summarize what I've learned and the overarching lesson before I say anything, and I'll come back to this at the end and summarize, is that insulin resistance is both the cause of and the effect of excess body fat and body weight. And that has been such an important thing for me to learn. And I'll go into that a little bit more, but first I'll summarize. And even before I do that, I want to tell you, because it was about a week and a half ago that I did my last video, and I did learn one additional thing that is significant since that time. As you know, I've been following a 50-50 plate, meaning 50% of my plate is non-starchy vegetables, 50% of my plate is the remaining for legumes, grains, fruit, and starchy vegetables comprise my plate. Anyways, I had before, this is in addition to my whole food plant-based and sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, salt-free diet. I had incorporated the low-fat portion of the plan after I had done some initial readings with the continuous glucose monitor and saw that my glucose variability had some room for improvement. Anyways, most of the trial, my non-starchy vegetables was comprised of green leafy vegetables, spinach, arugula, romaine, even things like broccoli, cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. Anyways, the most recent week, I had been seeing what would happen if I used carrots as my non-starchy vegetable component. Yes, it's a root vegetable. Yes, it's higher in sugar, but technically it's considered a non-starchy vegetable. Well, by some people do consider it starchy, based upon the calorie density of carrots. So I noticed that when I had more carrots, my blood glucose was creeping up. Not just my baseline blood glucose, but also my postprandial blood glucose. And I wanted to see, was it the carrots or could it be something else? So one meal I had just carrots. And my blood sugar went from low 70s to 144. So really high. And there was nothing I could attribute to it but the carrots because I hadn't had anything but the carrots. So I call it the carrot experiment. For me, carrots operate kind of like a simple sugar for me, really increased my blood sugar very quickly. And again, fell very quickly as well. So even though carrots are a non-starchy vegetable, or they're a vegetable for sure, no one would dispute that. For me, they react in my body differently than green leafy vegetables, even than potatoes, which clearly have more starch than carrots. Anyways, again, this is most likely, or in part, because I am insulin resistant, and I don't know how carrots would affect blood glucose in other people, but for me, that's what happened. Anyways, let me go ahead and move on to the summary. So I think the carrot experiment was important for me. So to summarize the things, and you can go back and look at my other videos if you want things in more detail, but right now I'm just going to summarize. The summary is that my hunger does not correlate with my blood glucose level. And this was true over and over again. Whether my blood glucose was low or high, it didn't matter. My hunger seemed to be independent of that. And I don't have a good explanation for that, but it's an observation. Now I'll go ahead and let you know some of the things that I observed that increased my blood glucose. So the volume of food, regardless of the composition, raised my blood glucose more than a smaller meal. This was even following the low-fat, whole food, plant-based, sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, salt-free plan. More food Maybe it's because of stretch receptors in the stomach. Maybe it's just because there's more food to process and your insulin goes up. I don't know, but it was not linear. Clearly, the more food I had after a point, so if I eat to satiety, my blood sugar is nice and smooth. If I eat beyond fullness, whoop, way up. So that's one important thing for me to know. Number two, the stress, even if I didn't necessarily feel it, maybe I was aware of it. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, stress. But the stress increased both my baseline blood glucose and my postprandial response. So my blood glucose after I ate was exaggerated if I was in a state of feeling stressed. Number three is that eating things other than green vegetables or cauliflower at the start of my meal would result in my blood glucose higher. So the counter to that is that if I start my meal by eating cruciferous and or green leafy vegetables, my blood glucose response is muted. So that's very important, again, for me to know. The order of what I eat is important. And again, I'm sure that has to do with delayed gastric emptying, and then probably some satiety component as well, because if I'm filling up with the green leafy vegetables, the cruciferous vegetables, I'm not going to have room for the other things that have higher calorie density. Other things that decrease my blood glucose consistently, meditation. Number one. Number two, the addition of the low-fat plan to my otherwise baseline diet of whole food, plant-based, sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, salt-free. Addition of the low-fat component, meaning elimination for me of avocados, nuts, nut butters. I had not been cooking with oil for a while, but elimination of all oils decreased my blood glucose variability, decreased my baseline blood glucose, and decreased my blood glucose response after a meal. To me, this means most likely that through this process, I was becoming less insulin resistant, because my belief is, and again, I've shared this before, but the Mastering Diabetes program by Dr. Cyrus Kambata and Robbie Barbero highlight the importance of adhering to a low-fat diet in addition to the plant-based component of it to decrease insulin resistance. I guess the other thing that decreased the blood glucose, I have to say, my pattern had been throughout the day, my blood sugar baseline would be to rise. When I did have the few times where I had either fasted in the evening, according to the recommendations of Dr. Hana Kaliovo, or when I had a vegetable only, and this was a green vegetable only evening meal, then my blood glucose level in the evening was not quite as high, and even the next morning and throughout the next day stayed lower. So again, it's not something I have adopted yet, but it's something I'm considering, whether I have vegetables for dinner exclusively, green vegetables, or fast. So my intermittent fasting window would be in the evening. That's something to be considered. Next, I'm just going to, touch upon some things that either, variably affected my glucose or things that I didn't identify any association. So exercise. If I exercise in a fasted state, my blood glucose will go up while I'm exercising, particularly if it's of longer duration or strength training. If I exercise after a meal, my blood glucose will go down, particularly if it's something moderate like walking. I mentioned before the variability in my blood glucose effect was noted when I had a fruit smoothie in the afternoon/evening. My blood glucose effect was more prominent than if I had it in the morning, after fasting, and after a workout. So this tells me again, if I'm going to have something that might affect my blood glucose more dramatically, then I have that in the morning, I have that after a fasted workout. And that seems to be best for me. When I ate in the morning after my fasted workout, immediately after or an hour after did not seem to make a difference in my blood glucose levels. So I'm going to continue my, my intermittent fasting, work out, fasted, and then eat, whether it be immediately after or an hour after. It doesn't seem to matter. And fruit, interestingly, I know, people say fruit really spikes your blood glucose. For me, it didn't. I did notice, as I mentioned in another video, that if I have more fruit in a day, my weight the next morning will be up. Maybe this is because of increased glycogen stores, I don't know. But my blood glucose did not increase in response to fruit when I ate fruit, again, without the vegetables first, just fruit. So I think for me, I did not test intermittent fasting per se because I've done it for such a long time that I guess it didn't really even occur to me to test that. Anyways, so going back to what I said initially, what I did learn, the overarching lesson is that insulin resistance is both the cause and the effect of excess body weight and body fat. And I went into this knowing I have some weight to lose, and it's been difficult for me to do. Impossible. I haven't been able to do it. And so I suspected I was insulin resistant because I had the weight. In other words, if you have excess weight, it means, or it causes insulin resistance. But I also learned through this, when I modified my diet a little bit in terms of, taking away the fat and eating the vegetables first, that I was able to lose some weight, finally, for the first time, because my insulin resistance was less. And how do I know my insulin resistance was less? Because my blood glucose variability improved over time. My baseline blood glucose was consistently lower over time without dips. And my postprandial increase in blood glucose was less. So by wearing this monitor, I was able to impart changes that decreased my insulin resistance, and in so doing, allowed me to lose some weight. So my hope going forward is that some of these lessons I've learned, particularly paying attention to how much I eat, the sequencing of what I eat, in other words, vegetables first, non-starchy, green, or cruciferous vegetables, managing stress with meditation, and maintaining the low-fat, high-complex carbohydrate. So adding potatoes and continuing to eliminate the nuts, nut butters, seems to be working for me. And it's my hope that other people can, follow a similar type of program if they're having difficulty losing weight and experience the same result. Because again, the weight is a nice byproduct, but the most important thing is minimizing insulin resistance, because that is what's associated with all of the diseases that are encompassed in metabolic syndrome: heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, dementia, stroke. Anyway, so in order to really maintain good health, we need to maintain good metabolic health. And to maintain good metabolic health, we need to pay attention to what we're eating, how much we're eating, and other things going on in our lives, like stress. So again, this has been a great experience for me. I've learned a lot for myself moving forward, and hopefully this can help you as well. So I guess that's it for now. And until next time, happy eating.